Now, ferry operators have laid on additional sailings overnight from Dover as they work through a backlog of Easter traffic.
Strong winds, a large volume of coaches and slower processing times at border control have all been cited as causes.
So, if you want to find out what's going on right now, who better to ask than travel guru Simon Calder. Simon, good morning to you. What is going on with all of this? I mean, we knew it was going to be very, very busy. We didn't expect it to be as bad as it was.
Good morning, Angela. Good morning, Stephen. Nice to see you. And I've been hearing from travellers overnight. It is absolutely miserable, I'm afraid, for thousands and thousands of people. I've just got the latest from P&O Ferries, one of the three ferry operators at Dover. They say the waiting time is now about 5 or 6 hours. But that is the time, I understand, you are likely to be waiting on a coach at the cruise terminal, which is a couple of miles away, effectively along the shore from the actual port where you want to be to get on the ferry. That's being used as a kind of holding area. Then you go through, you finally get processed, and that is absolutely the key hold up. And then you will be put on a ferry. So I've just heard from one parent whose son turned up at noon yesterday. They finally got on the 4:40 sailing this morning. Absolutely miserable. Now, as you say, there's all sorts of reasons for this, including bad weather, which has delayed ferries. But actually, this isn't affecting trucks. It's not affecting cars. It's only affecting coaches. The chief executive of the Port of Dover, Doug Bannister, yesterday said that effectively they've been taken by surprise by the number of coaches, which was 15% higher than they had planned for. And he implied that ferry companies have been selling more coach spaces than they really had available. But the big problem with coaches is that, well, as you will know, after Brexit, we asked for tougher checks. So when you turn up at Dover, previously you just sort of waved the passport out of the window and that would be fine. Now, we asked to be treated as third country nationals. So an officer is supposed to go through the passport, checking all your stamps. They then need to stamp the passport themselves, and that takes much, much longer than it did previously. Multiply that by 50 or 60 people on board a coach and you get delays. And there is nothing in the short term that is going to change that, I'm afraid.
You say nothing in the short term, but how about the long term then, Simon? I mean, because we've had several of our viewers and listeners getting in touch with us today, basically saying it's the French being awkward, because they can be. I mean, is it as simple as that? Is it just that this side of the border, they are not putting on enough people to look at the passports?
No, there is simply not enough room, Angela. As I've been talking to the Port of Dover, they are now, we had problems last summer when the French were late showing up. We've got juxtaposed border controls. That means, of course, that the passports are checked on the French side of the frontier, which is in Kent. We asked, after Brexit, the democratic vote to leave the European Union, we said we want an EU hard border in Kent. In fact, we got two. We got one at Dover and another one along the coast at Folkestone. So that was something that we asked for. We then said we want to be treated as third country nationals with all the stamping that goes with it. And anybody who knows Dover, and we've seen some of the pictures there, will know it's very, very constrained. It's beneath the White Cliffs of Dover. It was never built on the basis that we would need to have these rigorous checks. And I'm afraid things are only going to get worse, because coming along possibly by the end of the year, probably actually 2024, is again something else we know about because we were involved in developing it, the entry-exit system for the EU. So everyone in those cars, on those coaches, is going to have to be fingerprinted and have a facial biometric taken. So the longer term solution is simply going to be to do exactly what they've done at London St Pancras International Rail Station, Eurostar trains. They have cut the capacity. So there are simply hundreds of empty seats leaving on every train in the morning from London St Pancras, because there is not physically space to process the passengers. And I think we will see something similar at Dover. We will see either mandatory controls on the number of coaches and in summer on the number of cars, or it will be a kind of informal thing that will be regulated by the port. But it's a grim old situation, and just awful for those people caught up in it, desperate to get away on a school trip, university jaunt or whatever it is, and finding that instead they are spending countless hours in a coach just parked up.
If this is a coach problem, why is it then, from the pictures we've had yesterday, that it's cars we're seeing? I mean, we are seeing coaches and lorries obviously lined up, but we're seeing hundreds and hundreds of cars as well.
Well, I can only go on what the port and what the ferry operators are telling me. You always get sort of peak times. We've seen that picture of the trucks effectively parked up or in a very slow queue along the A20 from Folkestone to Dover, and that's a sort of frequent sign. That doesn't signify serious trouble. The flow of families in cars going abroad has been fairly straightforward. Yeah, I mean, you can look at a scene like that and it looks pretty gridlocked, but in fact it's flowing, and I would imagine that the queue time is, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour. It is the coaches where you've got to, because we requested it, you've got to have a French frontier official getting onto the coach, looking at all the passports, and stamping them. That is where the hold-up is. At least that's the reports that I'm getting from the port, from the ferry operators this morning.
You say it is grim, Simon. Well, grim now, grim in the future. But if we know it's going to be grim, it does beg the question, if that's going to happen, what with fingerprinting and the facial recognition in, 18 months' time, surely that gives Dover and Kent in general 18 months to do something about making the area for coaches that much bigger. Plan ahead. Why can't we do that?
There isn't space. Look, I've been talking about this with the operators, in particular the Port of Dover, for years, literally, because they know this is coming down the line. They are saying, what are we going to do? You can imagine a coachload of kids, all got to be fingerprinted. It's going to be very, very tricky. So the whole of the ferry sector is waiting for government action. But I think in the short term, it's going to be miserable. In the slightly longer term, we're going to see fewer coaches allowed on ferries. That will obviously push up the costs for, as it inevitably does when you cut the amount of capacity, and it will also mean some people will be flying rather than taking the ferry. But it's a problem that was absolutely apparent from the year 2016, because we were involved in developing the entry-exit system. We were the ones who voted democratically to leave the European Union, and these are some of the many consequences of that decision. I wish I could be the bearer of better tidings, but at the moment, it's not looking great.